Well, Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this too. I saw just from the little bit that you've sent me that you do couples therapy using MDMA as a tool to aid the therapy. Tell me about it. What do you do?
Yeah, well, I do that with individuals and couples, but my most recent book is called Ecstasy for Couples. And what I found as a psychotherapist is that couples counseling is often ineffective and it's like a long, slow slog for most couples. Whereas doing it with MDMA, I can significantly impact the quality of their relationship in one day versus a couple of years.
Why is that?
So, well, Trying t trying to help couples who are kind of annoyed at each other to work out difficult problems is really hard. People generally don't work out problems when they're annoyed with each other, whereas if they're in love with each other and under the influence of MDMA, they have those good feelings and they are more empathetic and more able to understand each other. It's pretty easy to work out problems. I never have couples come into my office and say, we really understand each other well. That's why we want a divorce,
Hmm.
but um, most couples don't really understand each other very well. But the medicine of ecstasy or MDMA, they're really the same thing, uh, helps create this space where people can really listen and be empathic. And also, they're open hearted. So it makes it easier to actually work through their issues.
So then what are the main characteristics of the MDMA in particular that you find are very useful for these transformations? You named a few of them already, but let's go into those.
Yeah. Well, I'll actually tell you a funny story that relates to that question. Uh, I've been working in the field of MDMA for about 40 years now, and my parents were wondering why I was, working with this, what has traditionally been an illegal drug. And so I said, well, the best way to know is if you try it. And to my surprise, they were willing to try it. So I gave them the medicine and told them how to take it in a nice setting. Well, a year later, I asked them if they'd tried the medicine, and they said that they had. And I said, well, what happened? And they said, well, nothing happened. We took the medicine, we waited 10 minutes, we didn't feel anything. Well, it takes about 40 minutes generally for MDMA to take effect. So I asked them, well, what happened after the 10 minutes? And their eyes lit up and they said, well, we had nothing planned. So we ended up, just sitting on the couch and talking. And then their eyes lit up. They said, it ended up being the most amazing talk and best night of our entire marriage. We talked about how much we loved each other and how grateful we were. And then we had some arguments the last month and we worked through those problems really quickly. It was so nice that we didn't have anything planned that evening because we were able to have this wonderful connection. And then we cuddled on the couch for a couple hours. The only disappointment was that the medicine never took effect. So I'm laughing the whole time because that is the effect of the medicine. But
Hmm.
one of the things I like about MDMA is that it's not like LSD or mushrooms where you feel really weird and altered or hallucinate. Instead, it's a medicine where you just feel like your best, most open, most loving, most sober self, most clear headed. It makes people feel very peaceful and loving and empathetic.
Heart opening.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
That,
why it's such a great drug for doing therapy.
yeah. Okay. So we have heart opening. It really opens you up to various emotions like happiness,
Mhm.
a deeper connection to those feelings, a deeper connection to others. These are the characteristics that I'm working through here. It sounds like, in terms of, I don't know if would you classify MDMA as a traditional psychedelic?
Well, it's not a traditional psychedelic, it's sometimes categorized
Uh huh.
as, one of
Yeah.
the
What's your
many
opinion on it?
drugs, but, they actually classify it as an empathogen, meaning
Okay.
it increases empathy. And there's
Okay.
no hallucinations on MDMA, so it's not really a traditional psychedelic, although
Gotcha.
sometimes people put it that way.
Okay. But here we're having some very similar similarities in there. And it sounded like one of the characteristics you were talking about is that conditioned mind kind of softens or gets out of the way. You're talking about a clarity here. Tell me more about this characteristic of the experience.
Some people have described it that I felt like how life really should be and how my mind should work, and the rest of my life feels like it's like a bad drug. Um,
Yeah.
so, it's interesting. Like, let's say a traditional couple's having problems. They have money issues, they have sex issues, they have how to parent the kids issues. And when people have difficult issues like that, they tend to avoid it.
Hmm.
Denial or distraction. And denial and distraction are not really good strategies for dealing with problems. Well, in MDMA, one of the things it does is it reduces blood flow to the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that feels fear. So people can talk about all these difficult issues with no problem, just like they're talking about the weather.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the reasons why MDMA has been so known for helping people with trauma is, let's say somebody's been raped or they've seen a murder or something like that, some kind of trauma, they can go back to that trauma and it's no longer scary for them. So it tends to heal the effects of trauma and also the scariness of having been through a trauma.
Okay. So the defenses in that sense. So when we have the trauma, and usually the trauma is rooted in not being able to process emotions. So then
Yeah.
when something happens later in life, you're talking about we avoid it, we disconnect from it. That's usually the root of the trauma itself. And
Hmm.
so then we have defenses that stack on top of these that protect us from that initial pain or any pain afterwards. And it sounds like what you're saying here is with the MDMA is much like various other psychedelics is those defense mechanisms. The fear of what's underneath those defense mechanisms softens quite a bit, and it really allows people to get to the core of whatever it is that's underneath these things that they've been avoiding.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. A lot of trauma healing involves being able to go over the trauma while in a relaxed, safe place. And nothing is more relaxing and creates a greater feeling of safety than MDMA. So that's kind of how it heals. Now, the MAPS organization, which has done studies on this, and I think is a great organization, they tried to get FDA approval for doing trauma therapy with MDMA. But the problem they faced was that they wanted to do a little bit of therapy with giving people the MDMA. It's not just a pill.
Hmm.
And the FDA is called the Food and Drug Administration. It's not called the Food, Drug, and Therapy Administration. So they didn't approve it because they said, we don't have anything that you ever do therapy with, you know? Uh,
Hmm.
so that was unfortunate. But I think in the next year or two, they will likely approve it for PTSD and other things just because it was shown to be 35 times more effective than the next best treatment.
Hmm.
Now, that's not a small amount. That's 3,500% more improvement than the next best treatment.
Yeah.
And there are no real good treatments for PTSD or for couples therapy right now. So I think it's a real amazing medicine. And when it does get FDA approval, it's going to really make a huge impact on people's ability to live a good life.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I work in psychedelic therapy as well. And I hear you on there's not very many or really any real solutions for the pain, the patterns of pain and suffering that people are in. And when they come in and work in these containers, we see transformations happen very quickly
Mhm,
and
mhm.
very, very readily. Um, So yeah, it is a bit of a shame, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons why these things are banned, so to speak, and I'm not talking there for altruistic or humanitarian reasons. But I'm very curious, Jonathan, getting into something like this. There's very high thresholds of we're talking about legality, we're talking about social constructs. Um, how did you get involved with this? What led you? You said you've been doing it for what was it, 40 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get started in this? What led you to this path?
Well, I was kind of a nerdy kid and not in touch with my feelings at all, not good at communicating. And then as I think a sophomore at UC Santa Barbara, my girlfriend introduced me to it. And I thought, wow, this is like a whole nother world, the world of feelings and love and
Mm-hmm.
connection. This is fantastic. So when I got my so when I went to graduate school to get my master's, I decided to study it. Now, at the time, it was legal. This was 1983, 1984. So you could study it. And I studied the effects of MDMA on overcoming traumatic memories. And we found like outlandish results. I mean, part of
Mm-hmm.
the problem was the results were so good that nobody could believe it. And then the next year, they made it illegal, so they wouldn't even publish my thesis uh, because A, they thought the results were too good, and B, now it's an illegal drug. But that
Mm-hmm.
got me interested, and as I became a psychotherapist, I saw that couples therapy is just a long, slow slog. And in the 90s, I wrote a book called Communication Miracles for Couples that got me on the Oprah show and Geraldo and a bunch of other shows. So it became an international bestseller. So I started doing even more couples counseling, and I found that there were two groups of people: the ones who did couples counseling without MDMA, which usually took years and was painful for everybody, and the ones who did couples counseling with MDMA, which usually took 2 days and had much better results. So that's how I got into it. And as you know, there's a like an underground movement, because this drug's been illegal. But I found a way to basically eliminate all the risk for myself and the people who I was working with,
Do share.
especially by doing it over Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't think of doing guided sessions with any of the psychedelics over Zoom. They're just too unpredictable. But say the 700 guided sessions I've done on MDMA, nobody's had a bad experience. So what I do is I have them get the medicine. I can help them with that if they need it, and then they take it, and I talk to them on Zoom for 5 hours, and that makes it really no legal risk because I can talk to anyone I want over Zoom, that's not illegal, and people can do what they want in their household, I'm not responsible for what medicine they might be on. It also has better results over Zoom than in person, which surprises everyone, including me.
Mm-hmm.
So I did about 300 sessions before COVID in person, and then when COVID hit, I said, "Well, can this
Mm-hmm.
work over Zoom?" Ends up it works better over Zoom because doing the medicine in your own house, uh, where you feel completely comfortable, adds a
Mm-hmm.
layer of safety
Yeah.
and makes it more convenient for everybody as well.
Yes. When I'm working with people, I find that when they're out of state and we're working over the phone
Mhm,
or through Zoom or whatever, there's a completely different dynamic than when we're in person.
mhm,
When we're in person, there's this we're in each other's presence and we see each other, and that creates some level of defensiveness every time,
yeah,
almost
yeah,
every time. And I absolutely hear you on, yeah, when it's remote like this, when you're in the safety of your own home, and yes, there's somebody through a screen who I'm engaging with, but there's this proximity, safety that's here, and I'm in a very safe and comfortable environment. Something very interesting is happening here. There's a little bit of a barrier in terms of communication, um, but I can still see a lot of what you're feeling and what you're going through. And if I pay close attention enough, it can be very similar to being in person. But it's very interesting to hear you say the exact same thing. Oh, excuse me. So, you working with people remotely through this has been very helpful and very useful for you and for others.
Yeah, it's also opened up, everybody in the world. So I've worked
Hmm.
with clients from 22 countries. Um, and it also helps to reduce the cost of it.
Hmm.
If MDMA ever becomes legal, the MAPS organization says the clinics would charge about $15,000
Per session.
per session. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yet,
it's astronomical how much in Oregon, the amount that the government and the regulation had gotten involved in the taxation and all of the hoops and everything, the cost had gotten so high. Yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about there.
yeah. And I can, because, it's so convenient, charge less than one tenth of that,
Hmm.
and get better results because it is over Zoom. People feel safer. And I have more of a therapeutic approach than the MAPS approach, which is more non directive, whereas I'm using the latest couples therapy techniques or trauma releasing techniques. So I have about a 95% success rate in a
Hmm.
single session, which is unheard of. Um, and that's why I tend to be booked a ways in advance.
Sure. Well, would you walk me through your process then, Jonathan? From the time that somebody comes in and
Mhm.
says, "I want to work with you," what are the steps that they go through? What is your whole your process procedure look like?
Yeah, great question. So I send them an email back saying how I work, what I charge. I work on a sliding scale between 1,200 and 2,500 based on whatever they can pay. Um, I do what I call a discovery call, which is a 1 hour Zoom, no obligation, where we see if there's a good fit. Um, I ask them a bunch of questions, their history. I don't want to work with people who have had schizophrenic breaks. And I don't want to work with people who are currently on antidepressants because that nullifies the effects of the MDMA.
Hmm.
But almost everybody else is a good candidate. Occasionally, I'll get somebody who had a heart attack 2 weeks ago, and I think that's not a good idea or whatever. But um, if after learning about their history and them asking me questions, they want to go ahead with it, we schedule a 5 hour session. One of the things I've done, which is nice, is I don't supply the medicine because that would be illegal. But I do let people know of how they can get the medicine in a way that has never led to a problem.
Hmm.
And they if they don't have access, they can uh, find somebody who can get that access for them. Um, and then we schedule a 5 hour session on Zoom.
Hmm.
We I have the notes about their issues. I have the notes about what they want to have as a success for their journey. And once that's done, I also record the sessions by
Hmm.
audio and video because I found that people get tremendous benefit from listening to the recordings.
I agree. I just started doing that myself, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is. Some people tell
Hmm.
me listening to the recording was more helpful than the actual session, so it's
Yeah.
really a big thing. But I put a big emphasis on the integration session. So about a week later, we do an integration session, not on the medicine. And I invented a method that helps people stay motivated to make the changes that they know will help their life, whether it be individually or with their
Hmm.
relationship.
Okay.
And I could go into that method a little bit, but I find that a weakness in a lot of the psychedelic space is that there's not enough emphasis on integration.
Or
And
preparation for that matter.
yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, in Oregon, the way they have it right now is you can just show up and you just come in, sign a paper, and there it is. You just sit down with somebody you just met and then you leave.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your integration.
So that's people have already listened to the recording, so they have the
Hmm.
insights, they have the experience. And then I basically say, well, what are two or three small behaviors that you want to, or insights that you got from your session that
Hmm.
you would like to make sure that you ongoingly incorporate into your life?
So
So
you
let's
distill
say,
it down to something tangible.
yeah. So let's
Hmm.
say, for example, I'll give an example of an individual and a couple. An individual might say, well, I'd like to meditate for 15 minutes a day,
Hmm.
because I want to feel that peace and that love, again. And meditation can help in that regard. Or a couple might say something like, well, I'd like to appreciate my partner 3 times a week, or I'd like to cuddle with them 3 times a week, or whatever it is. I have a lot of communication techniques that I teach people, and they might say, I'd like to use that communication technique. So, whatever it is, then I say, well, let's make it a contract that you're going to do that. For example, that you're going to say 3 appreciations to your mate this week. That there's studies that show that people who do that, their relationship goes a lot better because everybody wants appreciations.
And you're voicing it.
Yeah, yeah. Then I say, well, in most contracts, the business world does contracts because contracts work. They work really well. Um, so a contract has 4 elements to it. It has what you're going to do, by
Hmm.
when you're going to do it, who you're accountable to, and what the consequence is if you don't do the contract.
Okay.
So, okay, they might put down, I'm going to say at least 3 appreciations this week. Um, they're going to do it by the end of the week because contracts are for a week. They say that if I'll be accountable to my mate, or you can be accountable to a friend, whoever. But then the consequence is really important. Like, what happens if you don't do what you say? Well, in reality, if you don't do what you say, your partner starts to resent you or not trust you.
Lose
If
trust.
you
Yeah.
don't go to the gym when you say you're going to go to the gym, eventually you gain weight or you're out of shape.
Hmm.
But you need a consequence right away, because when you don't go to the gym, you don't gain 5 pounds that day.
Sure. It's slow.
Or when you don't appreciate your mate, you don't get divorced that day. So
Hmm.
I had to find a consequence that would motivate people,
Yeah.
but it had to be really small,
Hmm.
because if I said, well, if you don't appreciate your mate, you have to cut off a finger. Well, they're not going to do that. So, that's useless. I found only one consequence that was small enough that it worked, that people would do it, but it
Hmm.
was big enough or impactful enough that people were highly motivated to avoid it. And
And that
that
is
consequence was to rip up $1 if you don't do what you say.
okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, I've had people who are snorting $20,000 of cocaine a month stop to avoid ripping up $1.
Yeah.
I've had
Okay.
couples who were arguing 5 times a week stop because they said, for each argument we have, I have to rip up $1.
Yeah. What is it about the dollar that is so monumental or important that it has this kind of effect?
Well, in a way, money is the only sacred object that every single person in the world above the age of 5 wants.
Okay.
And nobody ever rips it up or throws it away. You might give it to charity, you might do something, but I have a jar of ripped up money and went on my living room coffee table, and people's eyes just bulged. They've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, it it's surprisingly hard and impactful, and it bothers people tremendously to rip up money. I work with a couple billionaires, and they have a hard time.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it works surprisingly well, and it works even when people swear it won't work for them.
of course. Does this create some kind of connection? So we're talking, you use the word sacred here. Money
Mhm.
is sacred to people. And then there's this destruction or this defiling of this sacred thing. And that there's some precedence or some importance on that that then leads you to do the thing that you originally agreed on. I'm wondering, do you see some kind of synergy that happens in the sense of my word or my accountability, the thing that I prioritized, whether it's taking care of myself or taking care of this person or taking care of the relationship through this process, then becomes sacred in itself. And so I don't want to defile or destroy that, like destroying the dollar. It almost is like a rewiring of a perception in a sense, it sounds like.
Yeah, I agree. And for some people, they actually really don't like ripping up money, but it's also
Hmm.
symbolic. It's like a metaphor that I am breaking my promise. I'm breaking my word to myself.
Hmm.
So it works on several layers. Some layers are more important to some people than others. But what I find is that ultimately it works. So if people are willing, and it's not about ripping out a lot of money. Most people, having done this with now maybe 20,000 people over 40 years,
Wow.
I even know how much certain goals cost.
Uh-huh.
For example, if you want to quit smoking, on average, that takes about $8 of ripped up money before you're down to zero cigarettes.
Hmm.
If you want to, uh,
It costs $8 to quit
yeah,
smoking
if you want to lose
cigarettes.
40 pounds, on average, that costs $6 before the 40 pounds of loss, meaning almost all the time you're doing the things to help you to lose the weight. But by the time you've lost the weight, which takes about 33 weeks to lose 40 pounds, they've had to rip up $6,
Okay.
meaning they blew it 6 times.
Hmm.
Now, for most people who are arguing like 2 or 3 times a week, they find that they tend to argue about once every 3 months now, and it costs them about $2 a month.
Okay. If I suppose this only works though if the commitment's there.
Well, like most techniques, it only works if you actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah, there has to
So,
be the commitment to the contract itself, a
right, right,
dedication.
right, and the accountability. So,
Hmm.
once a week, my wife and I get together for 20 seconds, and we say, "How'd you do on your contract?" 9 times out of 10, we're 100% because keeping your word to your partner or keeping your word to yourself makes life go better, makes
Yeah.
relationships go better.
Hmm.
And when you break your contract to yourself, when you say you're going to go to the gym and you don't go and you don't go and you don't go, well, soon you're out of shape and you're overweight. But when you keep your word and you do the things that you know would make your relationship better or your life goes better.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you find that through this process that people become more dedicated, more committed, more responsible and accountable to these dynamics of taking care of themselves and taking care of each other?
Absolutely. You know, we're not we don't have motivation, we're not held accountable for the things that make relationships work. We're not even held accountable for the things that make our health work. If you don't go to work, your job, you don't get paid. So there's a certain accountability there. but nobody really cares if you go to the gym. Your body cares. Nobody even cares whether you're nice to your mate. But being nice to your mate, doing the communication techniques, the appreciations, whatever it is, makes that relationship a lot more fun to be in. And since these don't come naturally to us necessarily, it's good to make sure like you're doing it. And people who do the right behaviors get great results.
You mentioned that jar of money that's ripped up in your living room. Is that money that you've ripped up, or you and your partner?
Yeah, money that me and my partner ripped up. Over
Yeah.
40 years, it's, a couple $100, but, so this ends up costing me about a dollar a month.
Yeah. So this practice that you've developed, parts of it that you've invented, and I think you said you've helped 20,000 people. Was
Something
that
like
right?
that.
Something
Yeah.
like that. Um, this isn't something that you just talk about and share with other people. This sounds like something that you do yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
How is this, what kind of role does this play in your life?
Well, every week for 40 years, I make a simple contract of the things that I know would make my life better that I might not normally do. I mean, one of them is like floss my teeth. I hate flossing my teeth. Ends up, you get to keep your teeth if you floss your teeth. So I floss, I put on my contract, floss my teeth a few times a week.
Mhm.
And so when I go to the dentist, they go, "Wow, for a 66-year-old, your teeth look fantastic." Um, Now, my wife thinks I'm a hopeless romantic that is very kind. No, I'm your average guy. But I do make sure that I appreciate her. I do make sure that I give her flowers every now and then. These are things on my contract. Don't tell her, by the way. Okay. She thinks I'm naturally a romantic. But in reality, I just make sure that I do the things that she really appreciates. And guess what? She's incredibly appreciative of that. And she does the
Mhm.
things back that I appreciate. It's a
Yeah.
win win.
I wonder what would be more desirable, somebody who's naturally that kind and that affectionate and communicative of their appreciation, or somebody who has put in the effort and the dedication to cultivate and develop and mature those capacities themselves. I wonder about that. You said, don't tell my wife, but I wonder which, I mean, for me, I would really appreciate the effort, the dedication, the commitment to this
Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Maybe you're right. And there aren't that many people that are naturally great communicators and really kind, especially, everybody's stressed out nowadays. So doing these little loving things, we all know that love is like the most important thing in life, but there's no accountability for it. And there's no instruction how to keep love alive. So when you know through MDMA or through a workshop or whatever that, oh, these are the simple behaviors that really make an impact, and you start doing them, you notice, oh my God, my life is now filled with love. My friends love
Okay.
me, my wife loves me, my body loves me because I'm going to the gym, I'm flossing my
Hmm.
teeth.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of a lazy slob, Julian. So, these things don't come naturally to me.
Hmm.
But with a little bit of effort and the fact that I don't like to rip up money, I do those little things and they make a big difference over time.
So you're talking about learning how to love yourself, but also learning how to how to find love that is there and to cultivate it and develop it. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
here's a question for you, Jonathan. Almost every single person I've ever worked with has some belief of unworthiness. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving. I'm not capable. I'm not, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Um, and usually there's a harshness that's connected to this, a lot of self criticism, self judgment, self evaluation. I even punish myself. And the idea of loving myself can be very far for a lot of people.
Mhm.
almost something that's unimaginable. Yeah, I hear the concept, I want to love myself, but to actually do it or to know what it looks like is so far from anything that a lot of people even can understand or even imagine. First question is, do you see that too? And second question is, if you do see it, how does your work help people to cultivate learning how to love themselves?
Yeah. Well, I definitely see that. And the way I look at it is that first people have to know it's possible. So the MDMA experience gives them
Hmm.
the sense of what it would be like to actually accept and love themselves.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people don't even know what that would feel like, or like,
Exactly.
what are you talking about? So that gives them the experience.
A win.
Then, then it's a matter of giving them a simple technique that will help them to cultivate that. And
Hmm.
I'll give you my favorite technique along that line. Yeah, I'm a big believer that most people are pretty lazy and they don't have much attention span. So most of the methods I give people take under 1 minute a day to do. Because that's the methods I use. Because if something takes longer to do, I probably won't do it. So the there's an area of psychology called positive psychology where they've studied different techniques to see which ones work really well and which ones don't. And this is probably the most studied technique in terms of having the biggest effect in 1 minute a day. Now, just to give you a sense, I started doing this technique when I was 16. And when I was 16, I was very depressed and suicidal. I spent large parts of my day thinking of how I could kill myself. And then after about a year of doing this technique, my identity totally switched to thinking like, I'm a great guy who's a blessing to the people he meets. You know,
Okay.
it's quite
Wow.
a switch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, psychedelics help too. But the technique is very simple. It's the answer to two questions. In fact, I'll do it with you right now, Julian, if you want.
Yeah, please.
Okay. First question. Has anything good happened to you in the last day that you appreciated or valued or enjoyed?
Absolutely.
Okay, what was it?
My dog came to say hi to me just a moment ago while we were on the
Okay.
like when we were starting this call. She came in here just to say, "Hi, I see you. I'm okay over here, and I'm just making sure you're okay."
Uh-huh. And you kind of shared a moment of love and connection with your dog.
Of course.
Yeah, great. Okay. And the second question is, what character trait in you or skill or ability that you have allowed that or contributed to that good moment happening?
Hmm. My ability to be present, I think, to
Mhm.
be able to feel the emotions, to see what's happening, and to connect with whatever she's experiencing as well.
Mhm. And I imagine that you're also a dog lover that is open-hearted towards dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, not everybody is. I have a
Hmm.
friend who hates all dogs. He would never
Sure.
have that moment because he's afraid of all dogs.
Hmm.
Okay. And I also expect that not only you're a dog lover, that you treat your dog well.
I try. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have certain character traits or skills and abilities that led to this really sweet moment.
Hmm.
Now, that only took a minute to do, but every day as you see that you have moments that you experience, that you create, that are due to a character trait you have or a skill or ability, that you are creating these beautiful moments
Hmm.
through who you are, that
Yeah.
starts to change your identity. So I went from thinking I was a hopeless loser
Yeah.
to thinking that I am a vehicle for happiness and joy.
Hmm. Yeah. So the default pattern beforehand was this self-criticism, evaluation, and even punishment.
Yeah.
And through this practice, what you're really doing is you're carving out a whole new channel, a whole new possibility. You say, yes, it's possible that I'm just worthless and not good enough, so on. But it's also possible that I'm this, and I'm making a choice here to put my attention and to follow this other path here. Yes, this first one flows quick, easy, it's seductive. It just right away joins me right away. But through 1 minute of effort, I can continuously channel this new path over here.
Yeah, and it starts to really affect your identity of who you are. As I
Yeah.
said, if your identity is you're a hopeless loser, like I felt at that time, uh,
Hmm.
it's not necessarily based on a direct experience. It's based more on a belief or a what I call BS, a belief system, an acronym for BS. But here you're actually basing it on your experience of that day. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I had this sweet moment with my dog. Why? Well, because I'm a dog lover that's open hearted, that treats his dog really well. And, you could probably come up with a couple other good moments that you've had today.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you're enjoying this interview, it's because you are persistent in reaching me. You're interested. You're have a big curiosity in this subject, and you like helping people. Well, that's
Hmm.
what creates this interview and this podcast.
Yeah.
So most people do have various good moments during the day. They're just not connecting in it that is due to some character trait that they have. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Or even able to see it.
Right. Because they
Our
don't
our
focus.
mind our mind might be just so busy and active in those repetitive patterns, default patterns where all I'm focusing on is the criticism, the pain, the fear, the anger, the shame, where yeah, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Um, I really enjoy talking to colleagues in this field and
Uh-huh.
colleagues who approach things very similarly, but also uniquely. So I'm really enjoying connecting with you. But if I were sitting here in my mind, thinking about what am I going to say next? What is the next question I'm going to ask? Because the belief is I'm not smart, I'm not intelligent, I'm not capable of doing this. How could I ever be with you and actually engage in all of this?
Yeah, right,
So
right.
most of the times we can get caught up in this narrative, this busy mind, this default pattern, and then miss completely all of the wonderful things that are happening right here. So again, this is a fantastic practice and it really gives people, it sounds like, a win. Oh, an experienced win of I stepped outside of that pattern of suffering and found something totally different and completely wonderful. And I experienced it and I have it right here and I can get back to it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the type of, exercise I might have somebody, put on their contract, to
Hmm.
do that every day for a minute, and they find at the end of the week, "Wow, that was a really good week. I was in a better mood than usual. Why?" And they
Yeah.
keep that up, and over a period of time, it changes, who they think of themselves as, and
Hmm.
it makes them happier.
This is really good, Jonathan. So with all of this wonderful literature on MDMA therapy, psychedelic therapy, so on and so forth, the buzzwords are rewiring nervous system, healing treatment resistant depression. In one session, so people kind of get this idea, and I myself had it when I first started getting into this, that the
Uh-huh.
psychedelic itself will rewire, change, get rid of, exile all the pain, all the patterns, all the nasty things that you don't like, gone, just like that. And obviously, that's not how it works. But from what you're explaining here with your approach to this practice, and then the exercises, the effort, the dedication and commitment is the psychedelic is very important in doing specific things, namely showing you something that can exist outside of what has been.
Mm.
So there's this experience of love and connection and openness when I've been very closed off and defensive and in all this pain, I experience something completely different. I can see it, I can have it, and I say, wow, I'm capable of that. I can get back to it. And then you give this very simple, very easy to grab onto, but requires effort and dedication. Practice 1 minute a day to continuously get back to it. So the
Yeah.
psychedelic is not the thing that's doing the transforming. It is the effort, the dedication, and the ability is inside of every single person that you're working with. This is what it sounds like what you're telling me.
Yeah, it's a whole package. You know, the psychedelics is one part of it, the integration is another part of it, and then
Hmm.
the technique that people use ongoingly is the third part of it. And you really need all of those parts together working for long-term transformation.
Yeah.
But, being that I'm a little bit lazy, I try to make it as easy as possible. A minute a day to transform your life, or doing a contract which takes another 2 minutes a week is
Hmm.
not a lot. It's within the capacity people have.
Yeah.
And once people see that love and joy and connection with their partner is indeed possible, it doesn't take 10 years of therapy. It's here right now if they know how to do it, then they're motivated to do these things because ultimately if you do what you've always done, you'll get the same results you've always had. So we're really in the transformation business, and transformation is a science.
It's a science, it's an art.
It's an art too, yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that it's inherent. I think everybody has the capacity, they have the wisdom, they know how to get back to the state that of who they are. And I think that when we step outside of all these adaptations to pain, that at the core of what a human being is somebody who's very compassionate and very connected and all the things that you just mentioned. So we can
Yeah.
really recover those things. And that's inside of every one of us. It's not something that's down the road, a year, 2 years, a week, a month. It's something that's accessible right now.
Yeah, I like to think of it as we've put on a lot of coats in our life, our add ons, but naturally we're very playful as kids. There's a lot of joy there. So it's really a matter of letting go of some of the um, belief systems and habits that no
Hmm.
longer serve us, that block a lot of that joy, love, and connection.
Yeah. Play. This is very important. And I mean, we know from lots of research now that it's essential for healthy development and for healthy connection. But how many people have to suppress play so early in life and disconnect from it because they're in survival mode and they're adapting to various means of trauma? And again, that's one of these dynamics that lives inside of us. And while we have disconnected from it, you're presenting a fantastic tool to help people recover it.
Yeah, it's interesting that kids are almost playful all the time. I have a puppy now.
Hmm.
Her life is based on play. That's the foundation of everything. She figures every moment is here for play. And most adults really never play. You might say they play tennis, but they don't play tennis. They compete at tennis, which
Hmm.
is different, and
Yeah.
and that can be fine, or they compete at golf. They're not experiencing that spontaneous joy.
Yeah.
And um, what we have to do is let go of all those burdens. Here's another thing: is that a large part of life is the ability to let go of problems, the
Yeah.
ability to let go of one's mind and its incessant thinking, and the
Yeah.
ability to let go of things that actually we have to let go of. People die, but we're never taught how to let go.
Right.
And one of the things that often comes up in the sessions I do is teaching people simple techniques to let go.
Totally. Yeah. We're not taught to let go. We're not the vast majority of us never learn how to recognize or identify emotions, let alone how to process emotions or
Yeah.
express emotions in healthy, constructive ways or soothe emotions. So if we are losing somebody, there's a great deal of emotion that comes along with it. And if we don't know what to do with it, then we do exactly as you said earlier. We avoid it and we distract to get away from it. And this creates so much sub patterns of suffering. So yeah, it's really important to learn very simple things that we should have learned very early in life, but the vast majority of us didn't. And learning these things makes the world of difference in terms of how we live and engage with life.
Absolutely, yeah. And some of these methods are really simple, but one of the things I like about psychedelics and MDMA, being that I was a very depressed teenager, I didn't really know that joy, play, love existed because it
Hmm.
certainly didn't exist in my family. And people get stuck in very limited beliefs like, life is about get up, go to work, watch TV,
Hmm.
go to bed, get up, go to
Yeah.
work, watch TV, go to bed. And it really, there is a whole other life possible. You have to be introduced to it, and then you have to know what is the path to keep on cultivating that joy, playfulness, and things like gratitude and love.
Hmm. What would you attribute? What are the things that you would attribute to helping you along this path? You mentioned a few of them already, but when you
Uh,
were in that hopeless pattern, uh, what led you out of that?
Well, the first step was the psychedelics, where I say, "Oh my god, there's this whole world beyond my own suffering, which I'd like to experience."
Yeah.
And then, I saw that as I was reading books, which is something I could do, I saw that almost everybody who was talking about having a fulfilling life, a lot of them meditated. So
Hmm.
I got into meditation, luckily, at age 16. So that made a big difference. That it's like if you want to have a healthy body, you need to exercise.
Hmm.
In this day and age, there's so much stress. If you want a healthy mind and healthy emotions, you need to learn how to like clear the decks each day.
Yeah.
Luckily, part of having a healthy body is we get to eliminate stuff every day through a toilet. If you
Hmm.
go a week without being able to go to the toilet, you go to the doctor, like, "There's something wrong, baby. I need help," you
Yeah.
know? But
Yeah.
people go weeks, months, sometimes years without really, uh, clearing the deck of their mind and emotions and getting to that
Yeah.
place of peace and serenity.
Yeah.
So every day I meditate to get in touch with that. Being that I've done it a while, now it's pretty indistinguishable from an MDMA state.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
And so that helps. But another thing that really helps with happiness is deep connections with people
Hmm.
and cultivating that through various things. My wife and I we take MDMA like once a year just to clear the cobwebs, so to speak.
Hmm.
And we've been together 30 years, and it's great.
You're talking about some various consistent, very common disconnects that we find in our world today. Disconnected from ourselves.
Mhm.
I can't be with my emotions. They're overwhelming. I don't know what to do with them. I learned from an early age they're bad, so I disconnect from them. If I can't be with myself, I can't be with others. If I can't be with others, I can't be with the world around me. How can I ever see my dog? How can I ever connect with the river or any of the natural environments? And then, of course, the things that I do don't represent who I am. So if I always feel like I'm not good enough, then I get in this pattern of trying to be good enough. So I'm going to go pursue wealth and status and power and prestige and get
Mhm.
external respect, so on and so forth. Or I get caught in those routines that you're talking about.
Yeah,
But
I
whether
call that the 40-year plan for feeling good. If I get enough money and
uh
enough everything else, then I will have a moment of feeling good.
a
Whereas,
moment.
you can, it takes me about 4 seconds to feel really high by meditating or doing breathing
Hmm.
techniques or whatever, or
Yeah.
connecting with my dogs.
Yeah.
So I think there's much more efficient ways to
Right.
get people to the ultimate things they're after, which are things like peace, love, and joy.
Yeah. Well, you can pursue for 40 years wealth, power, prestige, and accomplish all of it and still be miserable.
Exactly, yeah,
In fact, the vast majority of people are miserable even with all of that money.
that's true.
And so here, yeah, you're talking about making yourself a priority, reconnecting with yourself, and that allows you to really reconnect with others, your partner, your dog. And what you do, I can see it. You really enjoy what you do here, and it really represents who you are as a person and your lived experience.
Yeah, I'm having a really good time in life, and it's, the fact that I came from such a bad background,
Mhm.
meaning, there was a lot of violence in my family. My brother and sisters are in and out of mental hospitals because they took a different path,
Yeah.
but they had that trauma which they never really worked on,
Hmm.
and or never found how to find that peace within.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a good model in that this stuff can really work because I came from, a really, really bad environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And a lot of people have, I mean, there's bad environments, there's horrific environments, and there's okay environments. But not many people say, yeah, things were great in my childhood. My parents were so loving and giving. And, not many people had that experience.
Yeah, that is rare, and when I meet those people, it usually takes me about 30 seconds of asking questions before they say, "Oh my gosh." Yeah, there's truth to it, but that's not the whole truth. There was usually another side to it.
That's true.
Yeah, um, yeah, this has been incredible. There's a couple things that I'd really like to get into, before we conclude here.
Uh-huh.
Um The first thing is, I'll just tell you them both, and then we can decide what we do from there. The first thing is I'd love to know a little bit more about what your meditation practice looks like.
Uh-huh.
So frequently we just hear this word meditation, and for people that are coming to see me, and you know how it was for me in the beginning is I hear this word, I know it's something I want to do, but what is it? What does this even look like? And I think that um, for a lot of people, it's really helpful to see what do you actually do in terms of this meditation.
Mhm.
So that's the
Yeah.
first thing I'd love to know about. The
Well,
second thing
let me
is go.
attend to that right
Yeah,
away.
please.
I have a podcast called Awareness Explorers. And in that
Mhm.
podcast, I interview spiritual leaders, everybody from the Dalai Lama to Deepak Chopra. And if people go to the podcast page called awarenessexplorers.com, in the navigation bar is the word meditations. So we have over 200 episodes now. And when I'm interviewing Deepak Chopra, or whoever it is, I say, give me your best 8-minute guided meditation, the one that knocks people's socks off. So I now have like 200 of those for free on that website.
Terrific.
So I find that different meditations work for different people, and you got to find what works for you. So, here are 200 you could try out. A lot of them are similar, but they're from a lot of the spiritual leaders in the world. And you find one and you go, yeah, that one really worked for me. So, there's different types of meditation. Some are active, like people dancing. That can be a meditation. Some are very focused within in different ways. But what I do right now, which I'm really enjoying, is I go through, I have a list. Actually, I can show it to you. A little thing here. It's a list of people that I have had some kind of connection with in my life. There's about 50 of them. And I spend a minute on each one thinking about what I appreciate about them and then sending them love.
Hmm.
So it's basically a love meditation in a way. It's an
Yeah.
MDMA type meditation. And I just become infused with this feeling of love
Yeah.
for, 45 minutes or whatever. And, what I appreciate about people, what I love about them, sending them love, and it becomes very beautiful and intense. And so basically, I'm meditating on love.
Training your mind again to focus on a very specific path.
Yeah, yeah. And, love is probably the highest vibration people get to experience, so it's a nice thing to meditate on. It seems to really almost like clean me out of any problems or any poor me I might have going on.
Any poor me. Yeah. The difficult relationships that we have to ourselves.
And it's a difficult time to be alive, a lot going on in politics and money and,
Mhm.
all the technology. It's a stressful time.
Yeah, and so I think it makes sense for people to prioritize themselves and to take this initiative to take care of themselves and doing a practice of what you just mentioned of training my mind to focus on love and appreciation and gratitude for myself and for others and allowing myself to have that because if I just go onto the internet right now, all of the fear and anger and disgust is just crammed down my throat, and it's just laid out in front of me like an inescapable buffet. But
Yeah.
if I can step away from that from a moment, that default pattern, and do something like what you're talking about here, this love meditation, well, that says to me that I am worthy and deserving and able to have this experience, and I can have it at any moment, and anybody can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's available to all of us.
It requires some practice, some patience and persistence, and it's
Mhm.
not something that happens overnight where you're just always there, but it develops with time and patience and practice.
Yeah, you develop the neurology where it's easier to get back to that place
Mhm.
because you've done it so many times.
This is what we talk about in terms of rewiring the nervous system, and
Exactly. Yeah.
that's what we hear so much of in the psychedelic language. But it's, I mean, the psychedelic does aid and help the facilitation, but it's always the practice. It's
Hmm.
the active act of doing it yourself.
Somebody should do a podcast called Psychedelic Integration, don't you think?
Is that a joke there?
That's a joke. That's a
You're
joke.
funny. Yeah, yeah, that's what I try to get to.
Good. You're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Jonathan, with all of this inspiration, all of these success stories, this idea that it's accessible for anybody and it's just right there. If somebody wants to find any of the work, the 200 meditations, the podcast that you mentioned, or anything that you've mentioned, or want to work with you directly, how can people find you?
Well, for the podcast, they can, it's on all the podcast apps, Awareness Explorers. But I have a website, xtcasmedicine.com, and and a book called Ecstasy as Medicine, and a book called Ecstasy for Couples. But a good way to reach me is through the website xtcasmedicine.com.
Terrific. I'll be sure to link all of those in the show notes. So if anybody wants to find you that way, it's accessible. Before we part ways, do you have any final words that you would want to share for somebody who's listening right now?
Well, I think we have to remember that ultimately we're all beings of love. That's our true identity. And all this other stuff, our problems, our self dislike, our worry, are add ons that we can um, clear ourselves of. And that psychedelics and the right techniques are ways that we can get back to that love, which is really, in my opinion, the goal and purpose of life.
The true nature that we have, yeah.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I'll add on to that, Jonathan. A lot of the times we develop these beliefs that go concurrently with the I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy. It's I have to be strong, independent, and do everything on my own.
And
And
that'll keep you
so
pretty busy.
it sure will, yeah. One of the recovering disconnects that you were talking about is with others. So for anybody
Yeah,
who's listening, if you're inspired by this, feel free to reach out. I'll have all the links in the show notes, and we don't have to do all this alone.
well said.
Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. This has been a pleasure. I'm really happy that we got to do this.
Me too, Julian. You're a great interviewer, and I appreciate what you're doing.